Hi, good afternoon. How are you all? I'd like to thank CPAC for this invitation, and I'm just going to get right down to business. My name is Michelle Malkin. I identify as an American, a proud, unhyphenated, unapologetic, fully assimilated American. My pronouns are USA. America is good and America is great. Of these basic truths, there is or should be little dispute among us here. But two questions loom large. Number one, for how long will America, the America that we grew up in, remain good and great? And number two, to whom shall we entrust the existential responsibility of securing the goodness and greatness passed down peacefully for generations? I wish I could stand here and chirp happily about positive news. Yes, unemployment rates are at historic lows. Yes, regulations and taxes are being cut. Yes, we've got some stellar judges who've been confirmed. And yes, the reckless, feckless liberal media has finally self-immolated like a slow motion downing of the Hindenburg, and it's okay to gloat about it. Yes, we have much to thank President Trump for as he battles the Beltway swamp, the deep state, the administrative state, and the fake news fourth estate. And that's okay to applaud as well. But there is no sugarcoating America's long-term forecast. We face fearful odds. The game is rigged. The playing field is manifestly unlevel. And I will warn you that I am going to go over time because the most important issue that we face is immigration, and we need to be talking about it more than one panel in 20 minutes. Some of you old-timers may remember that when I was once young, my first CPAC in 2002 was to talk about my very first book, Invasion, which exposed how border failures and systemic non-enforcement of our visa program rules created the national security crisis that led to 9/11. Does anyone remember that? My last book, Sold Out, which I co-authored in 2015 with former American computer programmer turned labor lawyer John Miano, documented how big business and big government created an economic crisis by exploiting the H-1B tech worker visa program and other foreign employment visas for cheap labor. I have been accused of being a quote-unquote grifter for wanting to inform and educate citizens about these destructive rackets. But it's the GOP sellouts, not just the radical open borders left, that is in bed with immigration saboteurs. Like the ones who hijacked the Tea Party movement to shill for amnesty. Those are the real grifters, cashing in and practicing deceit at the expense of their base and at the expense of our country. Our shining city on the hill, and that is a phrase that has been repeated over and over and over again at every CPAC since Reagan spoke here, has become a much abused doormat to the world. Building the border wall is only half the battle. The numbers tell all. Our future is dimmed. The odds are fearful. We currently grant 1 million legal permanent residencies to people from around the world every year. The number of green card holders is expected to increase by 10 million by 2025. That's more than the current combined population of Dallas, St. Louis, Denver, Boston, Chicago, LA, and Atlanta. Now multiply that number by at least 3.5. Thanks to chain migration created in 1952 and expanded exponentially by Congress in 65 and 90, these new immigrants can sponsor their entire extended families, parents, spouses, adult children and their children, and siblings and their children. Princeton University found that recently admitted immigrants sponsored an average of 3.45 additional relatives each. An estimated 85,000 refugees and 20,000 plus asylees enter the country annually through an overwhelmed system so rife with fraud and abuse that the process is jokingly dubbed, quote, refugee roulette by immigration lawyers. How's that for a way to run your country? In total, from fiscal year 2008 to 2017, the US gave green cards to more than 2 million migrants for various humanitarian claims, a population larger than the city of Philadelphia. Nearly 500,000 more immigrants in that time frame got in through the diversity visa lottery. I've been talking about this damn thing since 2002, and it's still around. All the promises from the Republicans that we elect to office who promise that they're going to secure our borders and get our immigration system in order. And we still have this program that hands out visas like Pez candy and Lotto. Illegal aliens are eligible if a legal family member wins the jackpot. Tens of thousands of people are pouring in from terrorism breeding grounds through the lottery, unvetted, unmonitored, and unassimilated. Thanks again to chain migration, immigration, lotto winners, spouses, and unmarried children under 21 all get passes into the country too. Nearly half of all illegal aliens in the country have violated the terms of short-term visitor or work visas. More than 10.8 million people received such visas alone in fiscal year 2015, including 500,000 foreign university and graduate students on academic visas, and nearly 700,000 total foreign guest workers, both skilled and unskilled. Not to mention their spouses, many of whom are allowed to work here as well. Hey, remember when Congress promised that they were going to enact a nationwide visa entry-exit system to track legal short-term visa holders? Remember that? Nobody in Congress does. One has yet to be built, even in the wake of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which were perpetrated in part by several illegal alien visa overstayers. E-Verify has been stalled. Sanctuary cities have metastasized, and both parties are to blame. And yes, I'm looking at you, retired Paul Ryan. And yes, I'm looking at you, Mitch McConnell. And yes, I'm looking at you, Bush family. And yes, I'm looking at you, the ghost of John McCain. I don't have much time. Let me get through this. This unrelenting inflow of new green card holders, short-term foreign visa holders, legal temporary workers, refugees, and asylees is supplemented by, of course, the 13 to 30 million illegal aliens who expect amnesty and chain migration privileges from Washington, despite breaking immigration laws governing everything from border jumping to ID fraud, benefits fraud, tax fraud, and marriage fraud, to human and drug trafficking, to employment rules, deportation orders, and visa overstayers. By the way, I wrote that paragraph as a rejoinder to people who say, well, they're not breaking any other laws. The feds, under both Republican and Democrat administrations, have proved themselves serially unwilling and incapable of handling the lapses, the backlogs, the overload, and yes, invasion. The numbers tell all. Open borders anarchy multiplied by endless chain migration, amnesty, and cheap labor pipelines endangers our general welfare and the blessings of liberty to which we all pay lip service every time CPAC comes around. By every clear measure, the war is not on immigrants, but on American sovereignty. I have been called white for stating the facts. I'm not white, I'm just right. Both native-born and immigrant families like mine, which revere the rule of law, common traditions, constitutional principles, one identity, one tongue, are being replaced by militantly unassimilable and hostile generations of what? Future Democrat voters whose tribal allegiance to the left has only hardened over time. How is it that we have Republicans in Congress on Capitol Hill that are doing the bidding of the Dreamer movement? What about our dreams? Until and unless we reclaim the right of self-determination over the numbers, we are doomed. My fellow Americans, we stand at the bridge as Horatius stood at the narrow bridge over the Tiber River alone, facing fearful odds, as hordes of Etruscans marched towards him and cowards cut and ran behind him. Like his enemies, our enemies are both foreign and domestic. Inside our already flimsily defended borders, we are not at peace. Or rather, the radical left is not at peace with us. From the comfort of TV green rooms and Beltway back rooms and corporate boardrooms and conference ballrooms, it may not look like civil war is imminent, but threats and outright violence against you, ordinary law-abiding people, are now regularized features, not just random bugs of political life in these disunited states. You all know, who are plugged in and on the ground, that college students are being punched, elderly citizens are being harassed, MAGA hat wearers are being kicked off planes and assaulted in school hallways and restaurants, conservative speakers are being mobbed and Molotov cocktailed, ICE agents and their families are being targeted, pro-lifers are being kicked and menaced, pro-Trump, anti-jihad moms on social media are being monitored and doxxed. The madness is beyond parody. Last week, you all saw this. Social justice media warriors whipped up hysteria over a Mar-a-Lago pastry chef over her Instagram posts. Where are the sanctuary spaces for law-abiding conservatives who simply want to exercise their rights to free speech and peaceable assembly? The divide in this country is between decent people who stand up for America and dastardly people who want to bring America to its knees. We certainly should make common cause with others across the aisle who share our values, but we should never rush to embrace those whose fundamental aim is to smear and destroy us all. That is suicidal. Which is why I cannot stand here and stay silent about the role that Van Jones has played in attempting to silence the right. My objection is not to his support for criminal justice reform. I have dedicated much of my own time, energy, and money fighting wrongful convictions, false allegations, and prosecutorial and forensic misconduct. Newsflash, next time you need a conservative to talk about criminal justice reform, call me. You do not need someone who is going to spew fake news, pro-illegal alien propaganda to talk about criminal justice reform to conservatives. Newsflash and fact-checked. The most recent research by FAIR found that illegal aliens are up to 5.5 times more likely than Americans to be incarcerated in state prisons compared to Americans and legal residents. But my most vehement objection is to this stage being used to lend legitimacy to the George Soros-funded organization Color of Change, which dedicated itself to censoring and sabotaging right-leaning groups for championing the free market, opposing radical Islam, and exposing open borders. Have you forgotten? 7 years ago, Van Jones's group pressured Pepsi and McDonald's and Intuit and other companies to cut ties to the mainstream American Legislative Exchange Council. That's a half-century-old association of mainstream conservative state legislators who believe in, quote, the Jeffersonian principles of free markets, limited government, federalism, and individual liberty. What was ALEC's crime? Crafting model legislation on voter ID to protect election integrity, immigration enforcement measures, and self-defense legislation to strengthen Second Amendment rights. These lights are flashing red, and that's exactly right, because the lights are flashing red on America. Color of change. Thank you. Color of change. And the smear machine racket known as the Southern Poverty Law Center. Let Washington know how you feel about it. Let the conservative media know how you feel about it. They should be covering it. These people use the same playbook to marginalize and criminalize mainstream conservatives, anti-jihad groups, and immigration hawks as quote-unquote hate groups. They want to push us out of the public square. We shouldn't be holding hands with them. They conspire with payment processors in Silicon Valley to deprive the right of our voices and our ability to make a living. There are so many speaking up and fighting on the front lines for liberty and security. They're being de-Twittered. They're being de-PayPal'd. They're being de-Facebooked. They're being de-platformed. Many of you are in this room. If you are one of them, please stand up and let us know who you are. And thank you, each and every one of you, for what you're doing. You may feel like you're alone. People like my friends Laura Loomer and Gavin McInnes, people like the Center for Immigration Studies, David Horowitz's Freedom Center. There's so many, and I don't want to start naming them because I know I'm going to forget, but go to michellemalkin.com because my latest column is about it. Many of you are in this room, and many have been forced to beg for money to help them fight in court to restore their reputations. Many have been barred from this room. And if you're out there, you should know that you are not alone. Nice is not enough. After 25 years of doing this in this business, as somebody in conservative media and activism, I have to tell you that the hardest lesson to learn is that logic and facts and appeals to decency and fairness are not enough. Bemoaning double standards is not enough. Ultimately, our future will not be secured in a Fox News anchor chair, or a think tank office, or at a cushy GOP retreat, or on a cruise ship. The future is on the front lines, at the edge of the bridge. Then out spake brave Horatius, the captain of the gate, to every man upon this earth, death cometh sooner or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temple of his gods? Instead of throwing allies under that bridge, movement conservatives who have preached so comfortably as I have, here in the Beltway or from our cubicles, about defending America, while so many establishment Republicans preserve the status quo, need to help provide financial and moral support to the disruptors willing to fight fire with fire. It may be a coincidence, or maybe it's providential, that I am privileged enough to speak here today on the 7-year anniversary of Andrew Breitbart's death. God bless him. He was a disruptor. He was a disruptor among defenders of the status quo. We need more like him. That is the future. We need legislative action at the local and state level. We need politicians who will do something to stop the sowers of hate and division and their handmaidens. Use the tools at your disposal. Don't just stand there. Diversity is not our strength. And I know those words are a trigger. Diversity is not our strength. Unity is. Our common purpose is the common defense of our nation. Good people make America great. Good people stand up and fight. Thank you.